Good morning, and thank you very much, Joshi Saab, for thinking of me, and Mr. K.K. Nair, who just a couple of days ago, he said that, look, I think you should come and then share some of your thoughts. Although I mentioned to him, I am not an IR expert, nor am I a slowdown expert. He said, no, I think it is very important that we have an opportunity to have some of your thoughts. So I have no PowerPoint presentation. I only have some thoughts to share. For the mischief that we have done of preventing HR people from doing IR. We have done that almost about 35 years ago when we started the first human resource development department in Larsen & Toubro. The perception is that we made HRD an elitistic function, and therefore as a result most HRD people think very elitistically and neglect the industrial relations area. So that is what is the perception. And I stand, I'm very happy that I had this great opportunity to learn from Dr. Krishnamurthy a whole lot of examples that he has given, and I totally agree with a number of things that he has said. But I would like to clarify some kind of misconceptions that people may have about HR, human resource development. First of all, I would like to say that the kind of perceptions we have about human resource function is not only peculiar to India. About 7 years ago, there was a beautiful article that got widely publicized in internet, written by somebody from the West, and the title of the article is Why We Hate HR. Very popular article. And he gave a number of reasons. One of the reasons he gave is that most people hate HR because they don't find HR managers as value adding. Number one. Number two, on the top of not adding any value, they prevent us from adding value. This is what the line manager said. They keep on loading us with forms and formats and filling up things for which we don't know the purpose, and therefore we feel that besides not adding value, they prevent others from adding value. Third thing they have said that most of what HR is doing today is outsourceable, and I think the trend has already shown that in the past they used it to handle compensation, it is getting outsourced. Everything is getting outsourced, and Dr. Krishnamurthy has said even performance appraisals have begun to be outsourced. And I think we started outsourcing IR quite some time ago, which is the most unfortunate part that has happened in things of that kind. And the fourth important thing this particular article said is that HR people are not the best of the people whom the companies have recruited. When you don't find job anywhere else, you join School of Social Work and HR, and you are by and large, I think the HR people are by and large not the first quality people. They are okay, rejects elsewhere, finally pick up IR. And therefore, I think they don't have the brightest kind of ideas and things of that kind. This is I think essentially the American and British kind of a situation. Not too far, in fact, 1990, I had written a book called HRD Missionary, where I had very clearly said that the day human resource development function allows itself to be outsourced, that is the end of the day. End of the human resource development function. This is because HRD people or human resource people are doing things which are easily outsourceable. Circulating appraisal forms are outsourceable. Collecting out performance appraisal forms are outsourceable. Conducting compensation service is outsourceable because you don't conduct surveys. Hewitt conducts surveys, Ferguson conducts surveys, consultants conduct your surveys. Nowadays, everything is conducted by consultants. In fact, in one company, it's a public sector company with 25 senior executives. Most of them are busy appointing consultants, floating tenders, and collecting information and servicing the consultants every time. The moment you ask a consultant, do a competency mapping. Now, if you have to get competency mapping, first you have to float a tender. If you have to float a tender, you have to learn about yourself, about competency mapping. Learn about competency mapping and you float a tender, then you have to collect information about who are the companies to whom you have to circulate. There are about half a dozen HR people who spend 6 months of their time to float a tender because they don't know what is competency mapping. Nor do they know what is assessment center, nor do they know what is 360-degree feedback. So floating a tender takes about 6 months. Then after that, when the consultant comes, HR consultancy is one where everything that you want to do, you do by interviewing the managers and workmen. So a consultant will have to come and interview managers and ask them their difficulties, interview the workers, ask them their difficulties. Now the consultant will give you a sampling plan, so you will have to sample them up, you have to arrange meetings, make sure the rooms are available. So most of the time HR managers have been found to service the consultants and don't do anything else. Ultimately an appraisal system comes which is not implementable, or if it is implemented, it only benefits certain categories of people, and no matter whom it benefits, I think all people seen as, because normally when consultants work with companies, they get very friendly with top management for obvious reasons. If you don't get friendly with them, you don't get to know the inside story. And the moment you get friendly with them, any recommendation you make is seen as the recommendation of the top management and not the consultant's recommendation. So all kind of political things start. So India is one country where whatever has been said, why we hate HR, is pathetically true, more true than the West. And that is what the HR situation is. This is not true with all companies. We have had some excellent HR managers in our country, and these are the HR managers who paved their way to be chief executives of companies. If you go through the history of these people these HR managers who have paved their way to be chief executives of the companies, one thing interesting you will find is they always interacted very closely with all categories of people, including the workmen. And I think they may not have handled directly HR, but indirectly I think they were in close touch with industrial relations, close touch with the entire, I think the people who make things happen and things of that kind. Start with Rishi Modi, I think the kind of admiration he developed, or even people like N.M. Desai, who was Larsen & Toubro chief executive for quite some time, personal. M.R.R. Nair, who became SAIL chairman, was director personnel, I think was very closely in touch with union leaders, including the political parties. In fact, he is the one who organized for the National HRD Network, the only conference devoted for workmen and their affairs, sometime in the year 1989. I think, Marcel, you were there with Modi Xerox at that time. Arvind Agarwal, who later became the head of one of the escorts companies and later joined the RPG group, also was associated with that. I think these were the people who were very successful role models of HR, and they always integrated whatever IR into their entire kind of life. In fact, I think their interactions have been very much with IR. Now that's where I get on to, I think, what we thought. Now I always classified, the way the human resource development function has evolved. In the beginning, in the olden days, we didn't even have personnel. We only have establishment section. Then we had labor, welfare officers. Then we had personnel managers. Then came the HRD manager or HR manager and things of that. It evolved. In 1974, when I interviewed a large number of people in Larsen & Toubro, one of the issues raised by the employees was, we spend a large part of their waking life for the company. We spend 70% of our waking life for the company. What is the company doing to make sure that we feel that we belong to a family? That was the question that was asked. The HR department was an outcome of this response. In our response, we restructured. In fact, we created a department. Nowhere in the world Human Resource Development Department was created. L&T was the first. India was the first to have it. And the department had different functions. And I'd like to read out from the report something very interesting that was said. The consultancy report, which is now available in a published book format, this was published almost about 10 years ago, said that as an integral part of human resources development, there should be a department called Worker Affairs. The term used was Worker Affairs. It was a very neutral term that was floated, and the reason why this was said was the perceptions at the time, even of the Labor Department. Our interviews with the Labor Department indicated certain amount of dissatisfaction prevailing in the Labor Department due to the routinized and narrow roles they are performing. Even in those days, the Labor Department said, we are performing routinized notes, what today HR department feels. They have some sense of helplessness and feel that other officers of L&T treat them as very peripheral and unimportant department. And that is what happened post-liberalization in our country, even to HR. They feel that their suggestions to managers in the plant are often rejected because they are too low in the level of the pecking order. A similar sense of routinized work and peripherality have been shared by the personnel officers. So as a result, we said that, look, we have to upgrade the function, and therefore the recommendation was, in order to develop worker affairs function more systematically, we feel that the attention should be paid to all the 4 aspects of worker affairs. This is separate from appraisal and all that. That we have talked about. There should be a training department, there should be coaching, there should be succession planning. In fact, we were the ones who said at the time that every senior manager should make sure there should be younger generation developed to occupy their roles and things of that kind. But as far as the workers are concerned, we feel that attention should be paid to all the 4 aspects of worker affairs. Now these are industrial relations, worker welfare, work design, and worker participation, which is the most neglected kind. And I think that this is what you talk of all the examples, either you talk of Maruti or you talk of all the kind of things. I think we have somewhere not shown the respect that the workmen and the makers of whatever things happen deserve. Otherwise, I can't understand. I can't pay 25,000 rupees per month to my consultants. I run a consulting company. When I take a young MBA graduate or a person with 3 years experience, at most I am able to start with a 20,000 rupees salary. If Manesar is paying 25,000 rupees and still get their heads broken, that means there must be real some secret of the way they have handled the fellows. I think that has to be therefore looked at. What is the secret of your letting your workmen mishandle? Is it that you are getting disproportionately high kind of a salary, where they get 25,000, you probably get 2.5 lakhs, and just add another 0 or 2 zeros, then they start wondering, or you have not done enough in terms of educating them what they could do with 25,000 rupees and so on. In this context, I was reminded of a little audit that we have done with NMDC at one point of time. And NMDC sometime in the year 2001 or 2002 ran a series of management education programs. They got McKinsey to train the top management, 3-day workshop. Top management in 3 days, they learn everything. The younger and senior managers, the middle manager was sent for a 1-month program. And the younger managers were sent for a 3-month program in IIM Calcutta. But I think wisely the HR person thought, I also should look at the workers, and offered a 2-day program for workmen. And very interestingly, he called the program as Jeevan Yatra. And he appointed a consultant. He was just paying the consultant 3,000 rupees and perhaps some 3 crores of rupees to McKinsey, and maybe a little around that for training 100 managers to IIM Calcutta and so on, but just about 3,000 rupees per day. And 30 workmen used to be taken out and put in a house, and for 2 days they used to learn. And what did they teach them? They taught them about how to be a better father, how to be a better citizen, how to have good community life, and I think these kind of things. They said, we are not training you on how to do your work well, because that we can't afford to have you if you don't do your work well. Because workman is one where you can't employ a person unless he knows how to do his work well. Manager, after you employ, you start defining his role clarity exercises, you do whole kinds of things. Pay him well, but still I think you have to spend a lot of time giving him KPIs. He keeps on arguing whether your KPIs are right or not and things of that kind. Well, the poor workman can't argue on all those things. He will have to then, and if his productivity shows up there, and therefore you can't afford. So they said, we can't give you any more skill training, you are already a skilled kind of a fellow, but what we can tell you is a little bit of it, 2 days training. 5 years later, we were asked to audit. Managers remembered a few things they learned, but they said we couldn't implement most of this because the chairman changed. The workmen are the ones who, about 80 to 90% of them, spoke with admiration the 2-day training program they had. And they said 3,000 of us were trained, and we are very surprised why the company stopped this. And they said this is what has changed our life. Earlier we used to perceive each other in a different way. We started improving our community facilities. Most important thing is we started treating our children better. We started thinking that how important it is to educate them. We have had stories about how some of our own children have become famous doctors and engineers. This motivated us, and this created a new kind of an aspiration. So nothing about the work. And these are the people who remembered this. So that is where we said, it is very important. In 1974 itself, it was said in Larsen and Toubro, they must be this worker affairs department whose job is to constantly design and redesign the work, so that, I think, after all, a workman who is going to be working, I mean, how many promotions does he get in his life? And whatever promotions he get, what is the nature of work that he is doing and how much of change takes place? Not much of change takes place. So if somebody is going to be working at the same kind of a thing for 30 years, isn't it important for you to see that what is the kind of variety that you should have? But if in the same case with managers, 2.5 years is the average life of people, tenure, every 2.5 years, the younger generation keeps shifting, but you get a Hewitt to conduct an employee engagement survey, loyalty survey, commitment survey, do all kinds of things, phenomenal intervention. But the man who is going to be there for 30 years, you don't even want to be looking at what is the way in which he is looking at work and so on. So 74, we thought, no, there must be a full-time department whose job is to understand how he is responding to the work and participate, because people want to be treated as significant and things of that kind. And then we said all these aspects are important and need detailed attention. We therefore recommend a new concept, worker affairs, to be expanded. We also recommended the present role of industrial relations coordinator should be changed to coordinator, industrial relations and worker affairs. We wanted a coordinator will integrate all the 4 functions at the corporate level and keep on, I think, working, communicating to the top. At present, IR problems encountered by each unit are usually referred to the assistant labor officer, and if further intervention is required, to the GM at Powai. We recommend that the coordinator, worker affairs, may, with the help of training division, organize occasional workshops, meetings of line managers to discuss IR issues and share mechanisms of dealing with these issues. Some training may be provided to the line managers on human relations. Labor department should be involved in this. Closer to your recommendation, sir. I think one of the problems was the distance between the managers, supervisors and the workmen has increased. We think that if you only increase the salary, everything will be taken care of. No, that's not true. Indian mind is different. It's not America. In America, people are highly individualistic. In India, people are individualistic by convenience, but people also like emotional kind of an attachment. And people like to be treated with some amount of significance. And if you are not catering to this, then what happens is things like whatever happened in all these companies, including Maruti, may happen. And somebody, it's not only the HR manager. Therefore, I have 2 recommendations to make. One, of course, in terms of the HR people and their role. I use it to say, whenever we talk of human resource development, we said the evolution of HR function talks of 3 kinds of things. The HR includes, the starting point of HR is IR. Industrial relations. Then when you have succeeded, when you have done good job of IR, then you go into PR, personal management, PM or HRM. And when you have brought that also well, your administrative setup systems are fine, then you talk of HRD. I compared this with peace, stability and growth. IR deals with peace. In Maslow's hierarchy, basic needs, physiological needs, affiliation needs, it is similar to Maslow's hierarchy. You may like to go to self-actualization, but if you don't have enough to eat and drink and no water, suddenly you stop all self-actualization and start searching for air, water and things of that kind. That's what it is. Same thing. If you have peace, if your IR is good, then you move on to systems, where you get into, I think, compensation system, appraisal system, training system, learning system, employee engagement surveys, all those kind of things you can do. You introduce systems, IOSO system, all kinds of things. Then when you have stability through good HR practices, then you move on to the 3rd level, which is the growth part of it. Growth is there, you become a business, strategic business partner, you work with CEO, you get people to be creative, get the top management to do the right kind of thing, think in terms of 5-year plan, 10-year plan and things of that kind. So as a director on the board, you are thinking of the future kind of a thing. This is human resources development. Growth is development, futuristic, so that you continue to provide mechanisms for people to survive. But even the process, you only become excessively growth-driven and forget either the stability or forget the peace immediately. Then your stomach can't keep on. I think you say that, no, I'll sacrifice, I'll not eat food. And suddenly it comes up and says, sorry, it protests and starts with all kinds of diseases. So I think this is an imbalanced way of doing our HR, which is resulting in some of the sectors like manufacturing sector. Now this doesn't happen in other places because there we have, I think cleverly, I think Dr. Krishnamurthy said, we have eliminated the worker. We called everyone as an officer. Okay, and then did some of those things. So they are not examples to draw from. They take care of themselves because they have no commitment beyond 2.5 years. All IT people, average tenure is 2.5 years. And after that they go and they take care of themselves. The world is large, and by 33 years they become millionaires, and they don't know after 35 years what to do. I think half of them, I am told, in cities like Bangalore land up in mental hospital, have problems of marital issues and all kinds of things and so on. But it's fine, we leave them because they can afford to do all those kind of things. They can go for higher studies, do all sorts of things. But when we talk of the sectors where a person is going to be committed, he can't be mobile like other people, and he's going to be staying there itself and so on. If you neglect beyond a point of time, and if you are not sensitive to this, then I think the basic needs will revolt. The peace, and when peace gets disturbed, what happens? Is what happens. What happened in Manesar or any of the companies, 25 days loss, 500 crores loss, that kind of thing. These are all indicators that you have not balanced your HR function. HR function has to be constantly balanced by not neglecting the most important part of your bread and butter earners. I'm sure most of you remember C.K. Prahalad, one of his talks here, came up with a very interesting idea. And this is not new to many of us, we have been saying it for dogs years. But C.K. Prahalad said this. He said organizations, I think, should no more be seen as a pyramid in terms of structure, it should be perceived as an inverted pyramid. In the pyramidal structure, the workers are taking the burden of all the people at the top. Now what is the top management salary? It is all in crores nowadays. And who bears the burden? Where is this money coming from? The bottom level fellows. So the bottom level fellows are bearing the burden of the top level man, their salaries, their perks and all those kind of things. And at best you have paid, I think, some kind of a marginal kind of thing. I said, no, sorry, this is not going to work. It should be an inverted pyramid. The top should bear the burden of the bottom. So invert. These people are there to support them to function well. Now how do you support to function well? You don't even interact with them. You don't even know what kind of the issues are, what kind of problems are. Just by increasing salaries, you think you have done a marvelous kind of job. Sorry, this is not going to happen in a country like ours where relationships are very important. And those companies that have succeeded are the companies where the top management have maintained direct relations with the workmen. People like Khandelwal, who used to address here, when he became chairman Bank of Baroda, he made it a point to have direct communication with all employees, not only employees, customers, opened up, and he said that, look, I would make sure that my office will respond to you. And similarly, in HCL Technologies, I think Vineet Nayar's story, if you have heard, again that is what he has done. He said employees first. In fact, his book is one of the best sellers in Harvard because he has written about employees first. Employees should be focused on this and things of that kind. So you will find most successful CEOs started performing the so-called IR role. They didn't call it IR, but they started performing what I think was preached. And it's, incidentally, it happens, I think, main thesis of IR, Anil Khandelwal was on IR. His PhD was on industrial relations in Bank of Baroda. And he used to vehemently argue with me several times that Professor Rao, your HR, I mean, he would call me in way to provoke me, your HR is not going to work unless you tackle IR. And so true, I think that is what he has done in terms of whatever work he has done and so on. So I think this is lesson number one, that we need to constantly balance. And number two, we need to provide structures by having competent people. Now these people, now if you have a worker affairs person like what we have recommended in Larsen and Toubro, I think we have to revisit and we have to say, yeah, I think it's high time that we revisit and then we come back to this. It's not enough. You don't, just as HR is not the business of HR people. In my view, HR is the business of every single manager. HR person only facilitates. He spends more time with line managers. Unfortunately, they, as I mentioned, they spend more time with consultants than with managers. You should be spending more time with managers and workmen and collecting data, and you should be passing on the interventions that are required to the CEO. And that was a great model Dr. Kurian has shown. In fact, he used to tell his HR people, for many years he never believed in HRD. At one point of time when he invited me, in fact, he created a department of HRD thanks to Dr. Amrita Patel. But after some time, he just left them to do on their own. He said, I don't believe in HRD. One fine morning, the HRD manager was sent abroad to learn about what people in the US are doing on HRD. The HRD manager, I'm sure some of you know, Shailendra Kumar, he was the HRD chief. He retired, he works now with Grow Talent, Soil, and several of, he's a part-time kind of a person. Just he was here the other day and he came back and he was reminiscing the old days. So he went to US and he was handed over articles written by Indian authors on HRD. So he went and told Dr. Kurian, I went to Washington and I was given articles by Uday Parikh and TV Rao, and I'm only sorry that we are there next door, we are not using. He said, okay, you go and invite. Then my first interaction with Dr. Kurian, he said, I never believed in HRD. First statement he made. He is known for making such kind of, for long time. Now I have begun to believe. And I tell you what changed my mind. These people sitting in temples and training terrorists, temples and mosques and everywhere they are sitting and training terrorists, have been able to train people to kill others. If somebody can train somebody else to kill others, why can't I make in NDDB managers to be better managers? So I started believing HRD is there. People can be changed. People can be different. That was the starting point. And after that, we had done a whole lot of things with Dr. Kurian and a whole lot of people. If you look at that, I think very interesting thing. What is it that is the secret behind the success of NDDB? I think you are working in a sector where the beneficiaries are the farmers. It is the farmers organization. It is the farmers cooperative. You are constantly taking them along. You are educating them constantly. They know everything. Now that is a lesson that we can draw, that anybody who wants to be, I think, managing his own kind of a corporation well, need to have be constantly in touch with all the people who matter, and don't just surrender to the IR or HR person, but have these people who can keep conducting surveys, etc., and keep acting as eyes and ears of the top management. When that kind of a thing can happen, I think wonderful things are likely to take place in terms of changing our IR scenario, because the country needs all people. And the moment the disparities between the rich and poor are increased, and it is increasing. Human Development Index in our country in the year 1990, when UNDP started, was out of 110 countries, they have assessed on how well developed are the human resources in each of the countries. India figured 90th in rank. India, the second largest, I think the first largest democracy in the world and second largest populous country, figures out below 89 countries in 1990 in terms of how well developed the human resources are. How well developed means if people can live longer, if they have a skill base and they have good earning capacity, quality of life, UNDP calls as well-developed human resources. Very sensible. You know that you have a knack of living longer, you have a skill base, and you have good quality of life. This is 1990 scenario. We were not liberalized. We got liberalized. So many good things are happening. So many things we talk about. In the year 2012, India figures at 134 out of 184 countries. 133 countries have better developed human resource than us. After 20 years after liberalization, and we are talking of the top 200 universities, if you are following NDTV, don't have a single Indian university mentioned as top level universities. This is the quality of human resources we are talking of, if you look at. Now, why is this happening? On one hand, we are saying we are the country to which then the rest of the world is. I think both are true. Both are true because there is a paradox. In our country, rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer. And the gap is increasing. The same thing, I think, that when the gap increases, at some point of time, the poor will revolt. And you have seen this. Last 4 or 5 days of news, if you are looking at, a group of people are willing to stay underwater for 15 days. They want to look at their rights. Another group of villagers are willing to just protest and say that, look, we won't let this particular nuclear plant function until you do certain kind of things and things of that kind. So that is a very clear indication that if you don't pay attention to people, I think, who matter, they probably will come back to you, and they could resort to violent ways. And that is what happened in Manesar. They could react to. So it is a signal that those who are well-to-do, I think, need to really start paying attention to this. Now, don't expect solutions from Japan, because Japan is a totally different culture. America is a different culture. American books we should read to become wiser and not to do some things which they do, but just don't follow whatever they say. And I want to conclude by quoting something very interesting which was quoted by one of the Japanese CEOs when CII in the year 1993 or 94, I think one of the Japanese companies CEO came, and then he was addressing all the CEOs of Indian corporate sector in Hotel Ashoka. And somebody asked the CEO, "Sir, please tell us the secret of Japan's success as compared to India. Post-World War, we all started more or less alike, but you have progressed phenomenally, and we have not progressed. Now you keep coming to our country, can you tell us?" Very polite way he said, "Sorry, I don't know the secret of you are not succeeding. The secret of my success, maybe I can tell you something." And he said, "I will only illustrate." And the illustration is this. In Japan, if a house is on fire, if your neighbor's house is on fire, and you have a glass of water, without thinking you empty your glass. What will a glass of water do? Nothing it will do. But without thinking, you will empty your glass. Everyone empties whatever glass you have. And the neighbor, if he has 2 glasses of water, he will empty. Because if you empty 1 glass, the neighbor can't, I think he'll be ashamed. I am told in India, if the house is on fire, the person who has a glass of water looks at his neighbor who has a jug of water and he says, "Let him empty a glass from his jug, then I will empty my glass." And the fellow with the jug is looking at another neighbor who has a pot of water. The fellow with a pot is looking at another neighbor who has a tank of water. Ultimately, the fellow with tank of water is looking at Government of India, which has a lot of tanks and tanks of water and so on. So let them come and then put off the fire. And by the time, I think the house is gone. He said, "Gentlemen, the reason why, I don't know if I am speaking the truth, why I am saying this is, I have my factory here, I keep going to that factory. Whenever I come here once in a while. You know Maruti had, when he came here, what are the kind of comments he has made. Okay, he said, once in a while I come here and I am very positive, etc. It is not Maruti head who said that, I think somebody else. So he said, I come here, and on way, I notice a lot of people, lot of poverty. People, children on the streets, okay, who are not having schools which are not functioning and things of that kind. And how can you have an industry growing like this when your neighborhood, people don't have enough water to drink and don't have schools and don't have all these kind of things. So I have a feeling maybe somebody is not emptying this glass of water, wanting somebody else to do that. So if this explains to you, Japan has a culture where country first, company later. Company first, department later. Department first, my role later. My role first, I am last. People have been brought up in a culture where I think sacrifice and working for larger kind of a community is seen as a part of life. Otherwise, the way they have dealt with the tsunami, I think some time ago, is nobody, if it is in our country, we would immediately say whether Pakistan's agency is involved, ISI caused tsunami, or American CIA is involved, or Bharatiya Janata Party will say that Congress has stage manager thing because elections are coming. Congress will say this is the business of BJP. I think we only end up fighting and then start talking about it. But in the process, I think what happens is country goes to dogs. Okay, we are seeing that, a Colgate or 2G and things of that kind. So that is where I think the gap between the rich and poor, if it is increasing, same thing, workmen and the managers, if the gap is increasing, I think some point of time, these issues surface in some other kind of ways. Therefore, it is mandatory for everyone to be sensitive about what is happening, and I think be a little more considerate in emptying your glass of water to set the fire. I think if you don't do that, and for this the most important change should take place certainly with HR. HR people need to look at themselves and say, what am I doing? Do I have the so-called human touch which is required? Am I in touch with my people? How much time am I spending with the top management? How much time am I spending with line managers? How much time with workmen? And how much time with consultants? I think this is the kind of a question that they need to ask. I think the day we start introspecting, I think wisdom will come. Thank you very much. I think these are some of my thoughts.